We're going to dedicate this first half hour to a good friend of all of ours, of the organization Bond, a member of this church, and a fan for my radio show. Susan Terry expired this past weekend. What day was it, Patrick? Tuesday of this week. Tuesday of this week. And Susan was a good friend, and she's been around. I think she's been a part of the organization for about, if not 20 years, close to 20 years. And we're doing it on video here too, because a lot of folks who listen to my radio show are friends of Susan's as well, and they have called me and expressed their sorrow or sadness about the death of Susan Terry. And what I want to do, I'm going to allow some people here who would like to come up and say some things about her. I'm going to allow you 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes if you would like to come up and say something about Susan, and then I'll have the last word on it. So what I want to do is to let Patrick Rooney come up first. He'd known Susan for a long, long time before I did, and he's going to say something about her first, and then we'll get to the rest of the folks.
I think some people have talked about or worried about, did people influence Susan? I've heard that talked about. Was Susan influenced in some way by others? Yes, Susan was influenced in some way by others, as everybody in this room has been influenced in some way by others. But I think one thing people don't realize about Susan is that, and it just hit me after she died, actually, that she was influencing. There was something inside Susan that influenced us. And I heard that in people who were close to her. And the way that they responded after she passed, I could see that, and I realized that in myself. There was something in Susan that was very innocent and very pure. It was easy to relate to Susan because she judged herself. And in me, I could understand that because I judged myself for a lifetime. And once she started to break that and overcome that, she could start to see reality. And the beauty and the things that she wanted all her life were starting to come out. So I learned that. Maybe I learned that in the same track with her somewhere along the way. So, but I appreciate that very much about her. I miss her amazingly. But I just, I don't want this moment to go by without, us talking about what we've seen that touched us. Something in a person touches you, and it helps your life, and it helps make your life better. And Susan in her life did that for me, and I thank her for that.
Must say that I will miss Susan. So we actually lived together for a few years. So of course we got to know each other pretty intimately. The fights and the ups and downs and the ins and outs. But Susan was a very kind person and a very sweet person, and I'll miss her.
Very hard for me when I learned that she had passed, because we became very good friends.
I'll hold it for you.
She also lived with me for a while, and we would also have fights, and we would also apologize to each other and say that we were sorry, admit our faults to each other. And I got to love Susan like a sister. She was very kind. I never went to school because I had a real crazy mother. And so I didn't learn to read or write very well. And when I came to Bond, she became a really good friend of mine. And I didn't know nothing about computers or anything. And she never once, I never felt once that she judged me because I couldn't pronounce the word right. She was very loving, not judgmental. She has faults, just like I do. A lot of us did judge her and thought that we were better than her, but we weren't. We weren't any better. And recently I realized that we're just as flawed as she is. Because, I mean, she was even better than us in some way. Because she really didn't judge anybody.
Let me see what I got to say about Susan. Susan used to get on my nerve. Susan worked for me maybe 2 or 3 times because every time she came to work for me, we had to fire her. Pat would fire her, not me. Pat was the boss. He probably fired Susan at least 3 times, 2 for sure. And because she'd be doing all these crazy things in the office. I didn't know she had ear loss until she was work for us, and then she would answer the phones. And I noticed she was kind of weird on the phone. Hello? I'm like, what's wrong with Susan? And then I found out she had hearing aids. I'm like, we're not going to put Susan on the phone. And you're right, she was very smart. She was a graduate of UCLA. So she was very, very smart. As a matter of fact, she helped Manson, one of the Bond guys, write his book. She edited those books for him. So she was very smart. Susan would, she had all these different roommates, and she would be complaining about them. And she would call me up for counseling on the phone. And right away, she just started crying. I'm like, Susan, what are you crying for? And then it got to a point where she would call me, and she would start crying. I would just shut up. And then she's like, oh, I know you're quiet because I'm crying. I'm saying, yeah. And we just crack up about her crying. We would like last 10 minutes or so because I told her crying is not the answer. I'm not going to feel sorry for you. You're going to have to learn how to stand up and stop feeling sorry for yourself and deal with life. And she would like agree with that. And she definitely wanted to do that. She had a lot of insecurities about herself. And I think it had a lot to do with her defects, her physical defects. She couldn't hear that well, and she didn't speak that well. And I think it was more her own self-thinking than what people really thought about her. And because at times she had such a bad self-image, she thought other people were feeling that way too about her. So she would kind of act it out and get on your nerves. And then, I think we all tried to help her with that. The one thing I like about Susan is that I appreciate about her is that she never gave up. She was like the ever-ready battery. It doesn't even matter what she thought you thought about her. She never gave up anyway. She still would hang around. She would come around. She sought after God until the end. She never gave up on that. And she had moments when she felt like God wasn't with her, but she never gave up. And to me, that's so encouraging because the Bible does say, it's not the fast and the swift that wins, it's the one that stick through it until the end. And she definitely appeared to have stuck to it as far as seeking God and wanting to do the right thing until the very end. And I talked to her, I guess about a week or so before she died. It was right after she got out of the hospital, I can't remember. And she definitely sounded lighter, and she was happier, she was clearer. So she would, I think the last visit she had in the hospital, when she thought she was going to die in the end, it really woke her up, and it helped her a lot. Susan loved Bond. She loved this organization, and she had all kinds of good suggestions and ideas for the organization. She was always having some kind of input, and they would be good inputs. And she loved me as a friend and as her pastor. Even when I was hard on her and disagreed with her, she appreciated that. And there was times when she didn't agree with me on some things, but she always just hung in there. If I had a friend, I would want a friend like that. One that you can be yourself with, one that you can disagree with wholeheartedly, one that you can argue with, one you can laugh with, you can whatever with, and they are just there. And that's how she was with me and the organization. It doesn't matter what the situation was. Susan never turned her back on me, and I appreciate that. Even in my weakness, when she would see my weakness, she would just mention it, but it wasn't a big deal. But she never lost friendship. And it's hard to find friends like that because most people are hypocritical, all in the name of Jesus. They love you until they hear something negative about you or don't like something you say to them, and then they're gone. That's not a friend in Jesus, all right? And she really was like that. But the one thing I can say about Susan, I don't care what the situation was, what happened in the relationship, she never turned away from you as a friend. And that's the truth. And I've never heard anybody say that she ever turned away from them as a friend, no matter what the situation was. And I think most of us in this room are not that way. You know, you say something to somebody in this room, they're out of here. But that's what a friend is. You know, God never gives up on us. No matter what happens, he laughed with us, he cried with us. I guess he get mad at us, but he never turned his back on us. He's always there. And as children of God, we are required to be the same way with one another. Because everybody are overcoming issues. We all got sins that we are overcoming. And if we can understand ourselves and know that, well, if I got a sin to overcome, this person must have a sin to overcome. So I wouldn't want anyone to turn on me. Why would I turn on my friend or whatever? That's how Susan was. And that's the truth about her.